Great, good to be with all of you this morning, Shaun. I told you it wasn't going to be Tom and Jerry, but hopefully we'll still have fun. Good morning. We have a nice audience. Jerry, Diana, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Now, the doctor and I have met years ago at a function here in San Diego called the Atlantic Meets Pacific, which we did. I'm Burnham and others, and I'm just fascinated by what's going on in San Diego in terms of the incredible biomedical research that's going on. But you weren't necessarily exposed until, what, about a year ago?
A year, almost exactly a year.
Almost exactly, yeah.
So I guess the first thing I'd start, Diana, is take us down this road. While this is not a lysosomal disorder that your children have, it's a rare disease disorder. But I guess my question is, he's a great guy, but why did it take so long?
Well,
and how did that feel?
Yeah, when he was born, he was perfectly normal. He was beautiful. Nurses were coming from all over to see him.
Shaun is still beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
he's a great. Yeah.
And as he got a little bit older, seriously, just a few months older, we saw him start to not meet certain criteria, certain milestones that he should be meeting. And some were right on, but a lot of them were delayed. And each time I would go to a well baby visit, I would express my concerns to the doctor, and they would say, oh, kids just progress at different times, don't worry about it. And he kept getting farther and farther behind, and I kept making my concerns known to doctors, and they again kept saying, oh, don't worry about it. And he wasn't walking when he should be. At 16 months old, he had a grand mal seizure.
All the time at nighttime.
Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes.
He had a grand mal seizure at 16 months old. He continued to then have them constantly. He was having several a day to smaller seizures that would be 40 a day. And then the doctors started to listen and realized that there was something wrong at that point.
Did you, during this journey, I mean, it must have been incredibly personally paralyzing.
It was scary. It was terrifying.
And did you ever think to yourself, I mean, I don't know, do you work? What is your profession?
At that time, I was not working.
And did the idea of rare diseases pop into your mind? Did you say?
No. I remember going to the doctors, and they did MRIs and CAT scans and all kinds of testing and couldn't find anything wrong. And I remember thinking, we can send a man to the moon, but we can't figure out why my child is having seizures. I was floored by that. And the doctor told me at that time, you'd be surprised how many children have undiagnosed seizure disorders. Along with, theirs was an undiagnosed seizure disorder, developmental delay, mild cerebral palsy, and autism. And he said, you'd be surprised how many children are never diagnosed.
And then you met Hudson Freeze.
34 years later.
Yeah, and you know, as I understand it, when you two met, you actually within minutes had diagnosed this, right, Hudson?
Well, it was. Yeah, sort of. So the diagnosis wasn't arrived at quickly, but one of their doctors had done a genetic test, and it suggested that maybe this was really the culprit. And so as soon as we knew about that, and especially because they're local, so we had a special connection, and we said, okay, we need to do a few tests, we need to get some cells. Are you willing to give us cells? And Shaun said, yes. Shaun was right there. So we had the cells, and we were able to do some very, very specialized tests. And based on those tests, we were able to conclude that actually Shaun had this kind of disorder. And he's only the 15th, 16th patient in the world. But that needed a specialized way of approaching it to really know that we had it. And as soon as I had that, I would say within minutes, I was on the phone with Diana.
So what do you think when you have a case like this and your children are in a way so special, right? They've got such a unique case. What do you think if you were to shift the players around? What do you think, what's the story that needs to be told here that you think is missing, Diana?
Well, the biggest thing is awareness. I remember going, like a week later, we had the Rare Disease Conference. And so all of a sudden I was thrust into this brand new world and brand new family, which was amazing. But I remember at the conference being told, your doctors will not know about this. And sure enough, all 5 of the different doctors that we see had never heard of CDG.
Right.
And so I had to educate them, which is what I had been told would have to happen. So awareness is the biggest thing for me.
Shaun, you're up here today, and I want to thank you so much What do you think we need to know about your story?
My story is Tom and Jerry, and then I play the drums and go to church, and I go to a program with my job coach, Beverly.
Have you met other people with CDG?
My teammate.
We met Damien. Remember
Yeah,
Damien? He's our friend
Damien, yeah. I met Damien once, yeah.
And
At Timo, yeah.
and how's your mom doing in all this?
She's doing really good.
If you were to give her some criticism, what would it be?
Love,
Love, just love.
always love. Love is right here in my heart.
Oh, that's... You know, Dr. Fries, I'm interested in, you know, because I respect the center you're at so much. Excuse me.
Yeah, I know.
So you're around this a lot. I guess the question is, when you're in the field, and I would ask, you know, Elsa Shapiro the same thing, but you're a practitioner, you're a professional, you're researching. Something seems to be different in the water. That research is speeding up, it seems. I do a lot of these forums around the country, and normally I do national security stuff on TV in the Atlantic, and I'm doing more and more rare disease things all of a sudden. What's going on? What is shifting in science, in the community, in pharmaceuticals, that seems to be giving us more attention than we used to have, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is probably the advances in genomic sequencing. So with the new technology, you're able to actually probe into depths that you were never able to do before. And so that's come in the last 5 to 10 years. That's one thing. I think the other thing is that as I say to my colleagues, your lab is only a click away. And that means that any parent anywhere in the world can get your email address. They can call you on the phone, and they do.
Right.
And the reason is because it's just like with Diana and with Shaun. You know no limits when it's your kid, and you're going to try to do whatever you can to get there. And so if in some way or other families hear about me, and by the way, I'm not medically trained, I'm a basic scientist who works in an area called glycobiology. And there's not a lot of people who work in glycobiology, so there's not a lot of places you can go. So what happens is that once parents find out about this, they oftentimes call us or maybe another lab at the NIH. But that I think has changed. And then I think also the pharmaceutical industry has become aware that there are opportunities to focus on rare diseases for regulatory reasons and benefits that they can get from that. So I think it's all those things coming together.
You seem to be very comfortable with this experience, and Diana and Shaun and doing this. And I was coming back to this gentleman in the second row here in a minute who talked about, you know, patients being part of the process early on. You know, I live in Washington, D.C., and you know, you've got the National Institute of Health there, and I'm sure that there are folks inside and out, but anyone that lives in Washington realizes what an inhuman place so much of science is. And I'm interested from your perspective, you're not a doctor, but you're a scientist. What do you think the lessons are, the habits are, to need to achieve the kind of pathway that this gentleman just laid out? What do you think needs to shift that isn't shifting?
Yeah, I think you're right on the money with that. What we need is more cooperation, more interaction between physicians and scientists and the families. And so I sort of sketched out one of the things that I saw happening, you know, with our relationships. But we, last year and for a number of years before this, and again now in a couple of weeks, and then again next year, we're going to have a rare disease meeting that focuses on the science. But we also bring in the families for that, the physicians who are treating the patients, and everybody gets to mix it up. So we have a doctor's in session where all of the patients and the families can have time to talk to the physicians, because they never have enough time, right? So now you get together and you get the physicians who will be able to hear new stories, get new insights. And the other thing that happens is I can guarantee you that there is no scientist who's a regular bench scientist who comes to this who goes away without a tear in their eye. Mm-hmm. They said, now I know where I'm doing my work. And so I think we need to bring these people together time and time again. Every meeting that involves scientists, where you give scientific presentations, needs to have that human element, needs to bring in the families.
Mm. Diana, I read the bit in the New Yorker magazine about your story and about what you've done. And once you appear in the New Yorker, I bet your phone began ringing off the hook.
I think that was a different person.
Uh-oh, okay, well,
It was, but
Yeah.
yes.
Did I not know about it?
oh.
They
Well-
were there. They were there last year.
I may
Yes.
have gotten it wrong, but you're now on the map. I'm going to just say you're on the map. And are you feeling, because I do know that part of your story was feeling isolated
Right.
in this journey. Well, maybe you've been in the New Yorker, maybe somebody else was in the New Yorker with it, maybe I got the
Maybe.
wrong information. False facts, false news.
I can help.
But I am interested in just the human side of going on here, of how you both reach out and going from being isolated to being on the map, and what kinds of responsibilities you feel you now have.
Yeah, that's huge. Going from not knowing for all these years and feeling like I was just flying blind, especially when both children were younger, not knowing what was to come, what kind of problems we were looking at, what was ahead of us. And then now knowing is huge. I feel a huge responsibility. Mm-hmm. Doing this kind of thing is not comfortable for me at all. I feel way out of my comfort zone, but I feel like I had a big weight on my shoulder before, not knowing what it was. That was lifted, but now I feel like I have a better weight on my shoulder, and I feel like I need to do things to make people more aware, to make the community more aware, doctors more aware, to help to find cures, to help to make children's lives better. Hopefully, nothing will change for my children, but hopefully down the road, somebody else's life
How do
will
you
be
feel,
changed.
Diane, about, are you getting the support you need from everyone? Because one of the other things I read, you live this every day,
Right.
and you have a wonderful son who's just a charmer. But I think that part of the question is that a lot of people jump in and out of this topic. It's their moment to be engaged, and then they go on with other things. But are you getting the kind of support that you feel you need from all the players?
I don't know that I am yet. We've talked to all of our doctors, but I don't know that it's made a difference yet. I'm hoping that it will. I'm hoping as this goes on and more parents get involved and more knowledge is out there, I'm not seeing a huge shift yet, but I'm hoping that is. I'm hoping just even through my social media, I have friends now that had no idea, just like I had no idea that there were so many rare diseases. I honestly didn't know before this.
Before I go to all of you in the audience again, and we'll have people run around the mic so you can go to them, what do you think, I asked the same question of Elsa about this, fascinating case where I was reading about, the genetic markers we can all go out and we can buy today and have that done. And I was pretty amazed that there's a limit on the information that can be shared with us vis-a-vis FDA rules, and whether or not you think we should know more or less when it comes to kind of, genetic scanning.
Well, I feel like that certainly it needs to be shared if we're to get anywhere. I understand the concerns about privacy, but if we can opt in so that we can have more information out there and share more information.
So an opt-in formula
An
would
opt-in,
be.
right.
Hudson?
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's your DNA. You should be able to know what's there. So I appreciate that. And in fact, it was quite interesting. My wife wanted to do 23andMe, and she said, why don't you come along and do it with me? Okay, so we did that. And there are sections in there where they will look at very, very common rare disorders and the most common mutation. They'll look at that. It turns out that I'm a carrier of one of the diseases I study.
Oh, really? And you didn't know that?
I had no idea. There it was at the top of the sheet. You are a carrier. And what brings it home, makes it so much more personal, is that my sister is disabled. And could fit into the kind of things that I study. So I tested her, and she doesn't have it. But, you know, it brings it home how important having that information is and how you could be affected by it.
That's fascinating. When I did do this interview with Ann Wojcicki last year, I was fascinated that the Canadians allow more disclosure, and as I understand it, the British more disclosure. I think I've got that right in that. But it raised the interesting question of where the right line is in terms of people actually being given information. I think the FDA's concern was that they saw people getting information, the code, and then kind of acting on things before they had developed. Let me just to final up with you, Hudson. NIH. Francis Collins, I don't know if he's former or not. I don't know if he's political. I don't know who's in their job anymore in government or not.
He's still in.
He's still in, yeah.
Yes.
So Francis, head of NIH, but NIH has had some rocky years with funding and whatnot. What do you, from your perspective, we've got pharmaceutical companies that are engaged here today. We've got scientists that are engaged. But what do you think with the role of NIH and kind of helping to fund some of the, you know, the clinical trials and the process that comes in? Do you think NIH is doing what it needs to do?
I think they're doing what they need to do. They're not doing enough of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because there's not enough money. About, I would say, half of the ideas that come in as good proposals, maybe even more than that, and are approved scientifically, never get funded. And the reason is because there has not been enough support over the last dozen years in Congress to increase the budget of the NIH. Now that changed last year, and we had a $2 billion increase in funding, and that was the most substantial increase we'd had in 12 or 13 years, because the buying power has gone down by 22% over that time period. So we are back to where we were many, many years ago. So now the hope is that Congress, I believe, is very much on our side. And so I think we'll be able to get more funding, and let's hope for that. But that's what will make the difference going forward, because you need fundamental research to be able to take care of these new disorders as they come along.
Shaun, is your watch waterproof?
Yes, it is.
I just wanted to know. Let me go to all of you in the audience. Questions, comments? Yes, right here, if we can. You can just grab that mic. Good morning. Who are you? Yeah. Oh, hey.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Bozarth. I'm with the National MPS Society, and I'm also the mom of a child with MPS IV. So I've been in this world since my daughter was diagnosed at 6 months old, and she's 10 now, so she's doing pretty well.
Glad to hear that.
So I have quite a few comments as we've worked through this, but I do want to go back to the one about the FDA and that paternalistic feeling of we don't give them too much information. Well, that is just utterly ridiculous. We do need to have that information. Because I found out so early about my first daughter that was born, I was able to family plan and have 2 more children that are not affected by MPS. If I hadn't had that information, I might have stopped having children at that point, or not grown my family, which has been incredibly important for the quality of life for my oldest daughter who has MPS IV, to have these siblings, to have a really good balance in our lives. So I also think this idea that it's a bit offensive that we can't handle the information of what is in our genetic, what we carry. I think a geneticist told me one time many years ago that we all carry probably about 6 to 8 pretty tragic diseases, and it's a matter of we just don't know about it until it pops up. So I think it's important that we have that information so that we can make educated choices down the road, letting our other family members know what's going on so that they can plan for that.
Thank you.
And make their own choice.
Right.
I also wanted to just say that, the one thing that I think would be so critically important, I think it's obvious to a lot of people about the data that a lot of with pharmaceuticals or academia, they're coming up with all this data about our patients, about our children that have these rare diseases, but they're not sharing it. And if they were able to share it more openly and freely and not be so worried about proprietary information and that sort of thing.
So can I just put you there? Show of hands, is this issue a big issue in the field, the proprietary nature of information and not sharing it? I get mixed read from folks. Those who think it's a big deal, put your hands up.
I think, well,
so there's definitely, I mean, I just wanted to kind of get a sense of it because this is your guys' world and mine. But I hear about it a lot, but then a lot of people say, no, there's much more sharing that goes on. But go ahead, please.
well, I know that the company that holds a lot of my daughter's information, along with a lot of other patients, I don't have all that information. Would an advocacy group like my own, if we were able to get that information back,
Right.
Once a clinical trial is finished, then we could share it with other researchers, other academia, and look at other ways to approaching the disease and other symptoms, maybe not just the symptoms that
Sure.
is being treated right now. So I find that surprising that not more hands were raised for that.
It is early still.
Because that is happening in the cancer field,
Right.
but it's not happening in this field. And then also about the role of NIH, I have to echo that there are so many rare diseases that are getting absolutely no attention. I am fortunate, I feel that with MPS, we are getting more attention than we've ever had. 10 years ago, there was nothing really going on for what my daughter was going through, so it's definitely changed. I think the role of NIH is to fill that void that we have out there that is not being covered by pharmaceutical companies that have any information, like filling the void of all
Right.
these rare diseases and focusing on those and leaving the blockbuster drugs out to those that have incentives to.
Thank you for your comments. Diana, any reactions to what you've heard?
She's way ahead of me. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Hudson, thoughts?
I think there are programs at the NIH that are really doing well. Outreach for the undiagnosed disease program and network is trying to find more new disorders. And one thing I want to point out, I didn't get to mention it, is physicians and families and scientists have sort of different primary priorities. I think the scientists need to move more toward helping patients and being more medically involved. But there is a premium on being able to stay in business, which means getting your grant, which means oftentimes being first and somewhat being secretive. And I hope we find ways to break down those walls, because it's the same kind of walls that you're facing out there for different reasons. But we need to be able to pull together, and one of the fixes for that actually goes back again to money. If there were more money, there'd be less pressure. People will still be competitive, but there'd be less intense pressure to be secretive. And I'd like to see that open up.
Any other comments, questions? You look like you have one. Oh, okay. I was going to call on someone else. Oh, we got one right here, yes. Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. As a person who has a father-in-law who's been undiagnosed with a rare disease for the last 7 years, I understand the commitment and the need for advocacy among patients. So my question is, how can there be a more robust collaborative forum for patients across all rare diseases, and what would that look like to you?
Fascinating. Let me ask Dr. Fries that question. I know you're in the science side of this, but if you were to imagine, as a person sitting in one of the world's greatest research universities, a convening, if you will, of people across human experience in rare disease, do you have any thoughts on how one might approach that?
I think the parent activities make a lot of difference. I think having a parent who is also a scientist or a physician makes a lot of difference. And what you were referring to, that New Yorker article, was a couple who found, it was called
One of a New Yorker article.
One of a kind. And they said, my kid can't be the only one. And they mounted not only a search for other patients, and oftentimes brought them to us, because we had also worked with them. But they also then sort of created a format to help other people with other rare diseases. And fortunately, Dad is a computer person, and actually moved into the White House to work on the precision medicine initiative, one, because of his talent as a scientist, but also because of his heart in the rare diseases. So he came to attention. So I think being able to have influential people in positions where they can go out and pull different groups together, I think that's one of the essential things. And scientists need to get out of the lab more, get out and talk to the public. And by talking, I don't mean talking scientific language, I mean regular English. And I think that can help. That'll begin to break down those barriers, and that's our responsibility.
Any quick thoughts, Diana?
I just feel really blessed that we were finally able to get a diagnosis. It's just been years of not knowing, years of thinking, what if I did something wrong? What a relief to find out, and I'm so grateful to know what it is, and now feel like that we can try to do something about it.
You know, this is not my field, but just in reaction, I'll tell you, because I think it's a very interesting proposal you just made. And you've got a lot of talent in this room, but I've learned in almost anything, it doesn't matter what field, for you to basically set up a new arena that matters, that moves the needle, that gives people an opportunity to share more, that builds in other institutions, that creates a different equilibrium between the stakeholders, it matters, are a few obsessive compulsive maniacs who are completely focused on moving that. And I get the sense that there may be a few people in this early morning breakfast that are like that. But Shaun, I want to give you the last word, my friend. Any quick thoughts you want to leave us with before you have a fun day?
I love what my grandma said to me when I was calling her on lunch break.
You called Grandma on lunch break, didn't you?
Yes, I did. And I told her that I love her, that she's always loved in my heart.
You're just all about the love.
Yes, always about the love.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Diana? Thank you.